Welcome to Everything Life and Real Estate. Let's get started with our hosts, Linda McKissick and Dana Gentry.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Everything Life and Real Estate. I'm Linda McKissick.
And I'm Dana Gentry.
Hi, Dana. How are you doing today?
Man, we're together.
Absolutely. It's shocking, isn't it?
I know, for our 100th episode.
So exciting. And you've been by the pool and you're crispy.
Oh, I'm like fried. Yes.
Fried and crispy. And I've been shopping. So it's been a good day for both of us. Yes, our 100th episode. Can you believe it?
I know.
Wow.
This is probably the longest I've stuck with something, like that. I mean, that's a lot of episodes, really.
It is. And it doesn't seem like we just started it. We just decided that we were going to have a conversation. And if other people wanted to listen in, that would be great. And if not, we'd just have a conversation.
Yeah. So we were trying to think of something unique to do for the 100th episode. And we decided that sharing 100 things that we've learned over time would be a great thing for our audience. So yeah.
So, and here's the thing, we just finished a John Maxwell. I didn't put any of the John Maxwell because I thought we'd keep that as a separate episode. So we're not only going to teach you the 100 things we've learned, but we'll also do an episode of what we learned this week at Exchange in West Palm, Florida.
Yeah, I was just trying to think. I think I have 2 things that he's hit on before that I've always learned, but yeah.
Good. Well, we'll just elaborate on this.
Such a great week. Yes.
Awesome. All right. Well, you want to kick us off, Dana? We'll each do 50 of our 100.
Okay. Yep. All right. Here we go. Okay. So the very first thing I think is just most important to me, which is just keep the faith and always put God first. And I think over time, the older that I get, the more that I realize that that's just the most important thing, hands down. And so if I always kind of just put God first in everything, even though a lot of times I need a lot of reminders and I have to put like little signals that make me remember that first, that's always the best lesson for me.
Awesome. Well, I'll go with one that's kind of similar for me, and that is that I really have to refer to a lot right now with everything that's going on in our political climate and with COVID, and that is God is the King of all rulers. He is in control. No matter what feels out of control, He's in control.
Yeah. That was a good one for John. A little bit talked about that this week too. Okay, my number 2 was the quickest way to destroy something special is to compare it to something else.
Oh,
and that was a Craig Groeschel from a long time ago. I learned that from Craig, and that's probably been one of the biggest lessons in my life. And he shares a funny example, like you remodel your kitchen and you think it's great, and then you see your neighbor's kitchen and they have something that you didn't have, and your beautiful kitchen you waited forever for is instantly like, oh man, I don't even know if I like it anymore. So he says comparison is the enemy of your calling. The quickest way to destroy something special is to compare it to something else.
Awesome. Well, we wondered how many of these we would have the same. And the cool thing is we may not have them exactly the same, but we have them very similar. Yeah. So I'll go with the one that's similar to mine on that one is don't compare your inside to someone else's outside. Yeah. We look at people who have it all together and maybe have accomplished a lot or what we want to accomplish. And we tend to look at our limitations and what we haven't done instead of realizing that they also have limitations. And so don't compare your insides to someone else's outsides would be similar to that I have.
Yep. Okay, my next one was this too shall pass. Everything good in life and everything bad in life, but this too shall pass. And John actually said something a couple years ago that I wrote down. He said, things may be falling apart for you, but they're not falling apart for God. So rise above the hysteria and become an asset to those around you. And so I always just think, man, this too shall pass. Whatever it is, whether it's good or bad, it's going to pass.
Awesome. Love that one. And the one I have similar to that I've always told my kids is 99% of what you worry about never happens to the extent you worry about it.
That's so true.
So that would be what I would kind of relate similar to what yours is.
Are you going out of order? I will get so messed up if I go out of order.
I am, but that's okay.
Okay. All right. My next one, probably one of the biggest lessons I've learned is always do the right thing, even when your competition or someone else isn't. And even if you feel like in that moment, like, man, how are they not doing the right thing? And they're coming out ahead. Always do the right thing. And in the end, even if it doesn't feel like it in the moment, later, you'll see that you always are the person who really gets the most out of it anyway.
Oh, absolutely. Love that one. And the one that I would have similar to that is integrity is doing the right thing when no one else is watching.
Yeah. I love that. Okay, let's see next. Man, okay. Experiences are what I remember, not things. And that's been a big lesson for me because I love things too. But experiences for me are definitely one. And really just making them special and making time for them, making experiences for yourself and for those you care about. And so I wrote down with this one, be an experience junkie. Don't you feel like once you start to have all these experiences, then you just want to do more and more experiences?
Oh, absolutely. Coming off a week of great experiences with John Maxwell. And I would even say, make sure you include the people you love with your experiences, because that makes it even more memorable to take people along with you that are really important to you.
Yeah, love that. Your turn.
Okay, so I would say, let me think. So collaboration versus competition. I think if we can look for ways to collaborate versus being competitors, all of our worlds would be so much bigger. And I think so much of the first part of my life was, not necessarily me winning and somebody else's losing, but it was definitely about competition of how do I win this award or how do I win that? And there's nothing wrong with wanting to win. I love people who want to win. But instead of always looking for that, what if I look for ways that I could collaborate with people instead of compete?
Yeah, I love that. I think that's more important now than probably it ever has been.
Ever.
Let's see. My next one, biggest lesson was you can never be too learning based. And I think part 2 of that is I've really learned over the last probably 7 to 8 years that those are the type of people, learning based people are the type of people that I'm my best self around. I do best around other people who are learning based. And I have really struggled when I'm around people who aren't. And so I think for me, a big lesson is just, you got to keep pushing yourself to always be learning based.
Yeah. And mine that would match that is learning is an investment, not a cost.
Ooh, that's a good one too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when we talk about John, we'll talk about his little success kit that he purchased early on.
My next one is just a really simple one. Who you're around really, really, really matters. And that's been a big lesson for me too.
Yeah. And mine comes from Jim Rohn that's similar to that is you are the sum of the 5 people you hang around the most. Yeah. I mean, it's been proven if you took the average of their income, your income would be that average, pretty close. Yeah. It's kind of like the 80-20 rule. Yeah. It actually always kind of applies. So who you spend time with matters. And time is your most valuable asset. Yeah. So choosing very carefully how you spend it and who you spend it with is important.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, next one for me is a funny one, and it's a lesson that I call the 24-hour rule. And so the 24-hour rule for me is if I get hot about something, I make myself wait 24 hours before I respond or send an email or anything like that. And one of the things I will share that we learned this week at John that I wrote down that I thought was great was when Doris Goodwin shared with us that Abe Lincoln had the hot letter, he would write it when he was hot, and then he would hope he would never have to send it. And they found a bunch that he never actually did send. But I wrote down, never underestimate the power of a measured response. And I remind myself that a lot because sometimes in the moment, you just want to be quick to fire something off. But the 24-hour rule is a big lesson for me.
Well, and I find that the things I want to fire off are the things that irritate me quickly. Like, I think based on our behavior, certain things send us to anger very quickly. Yeah. For me, if I feel like I'm being taken advantage of, I want to react rather than respond. So mine on that one would be my reaction is not my response.
Yeah. Okay, so let's see. Next for me, number 9 would probably be know yourself well enough to know when you're out of alignment and why. And one of the things that I've really learned is I think this may be something from Andy Stanley, but if you don't know why something's working really, really great when it's working great, you won't know how to fix it when it's not. And I think the same thing about yourself. I have had to really learn to know when I'm out of alignment with something, maybe my values or my morals are just internally out of alignment and why. And so that's been a big lesson for me the last couple of years.
I love that one. Yeah. It's so funny. I can't believe we have some similar. We don't have a lot of the same. That's awesome. I put, don't try to control everything. That controlling is suffocating to other people. And
that's so true.
So just, and the older I get, the easier this gets to do. But I really think about, Linda, is this really something that you feel like you have to be in control of? Or is this something that really even matters, but people that try to control everything are suffocating.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, totally true. My next one, this is something I learned from John a long time ago, and it is to be a hope dealer. And he's kind of talked about this before, but what he says is it doesn't mean that you're always happy, as if you say you're an optimistic person, or you may be labeled by that. I used to think that just because people would say, oh, you're so optimistic, you're so happy, that was like a negative thing. But really what John taught me was it doesn't mean that when you're optimistic or you have hope that you're in denial of reality. It's not having blind faith. It means that you have confidence about the future or a successful outcome. And so when I think about it, being a hope dealer, especially right now in our times, it's just the unwavering expectation that everything is going to work out for the better for me, because we're people of faith. It's just that God's in control. But he challenged me, and I think this is a great lesson, to pause and think about how you see your future 5, 10, 20 years from now. And do your thoughts drift towards faith, or do they drift towards negative? And if they drift towards negative, then you really need to be conscious of that.
That's very good.
Yeah.
I'm loving these. These are great. Mine's a simple one, and I always say it to my kids and my grandkids on the way to school. Be kind to everyone.
That's a good one. Simple, but good one.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love
Be kind to everyone.
So my next one is a little bit of a story, and this is probably one of my favorite lessons I've ever learned, and it's the 3 bricklayers story. Have you heard that? I feel like maybe I don't think we talked about it before. Okay, so really quickly, there were 3 bricklayers, and they were on a scaffold, and they were building something. And so the first bricklayer was asked, "What are you doing?" And he replied, "I'm a bricklayer. I'm working hard to layer bricks to feed my family." The second bricklayer, when asked, said, I'm a builder. I'm building a wall." And the third bricklayer, when he was asked what he was doing, he said, "I'm a cathedral builder. I'm building a great cathedral to the Almighty." And I love the 3 bricklayer story because they're all doing the same exact thing. They're building the cathedral, but it's the difference between their mindsets, and it's big picture thinking. And the third one, he had the attitude, and he had the connection to the mission, and the power of purpose. And I love the 3 bricklayer story because I think we could all just think that we're selling another house, or we're, getting another agent to join our company, whoever we're with, or something like that. But really, it's so much more than that. And so that story always teaches me such a great lesson.
Oh, that's awesome. It's kind of like the difference between the infinite game.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. Versus the finite.
What I love about great truths is you'll hear them in many different ways. And after a while, the great ones continue to be, kind of reinvented in a different way, or restated in a different way.
Yeah, I love that.
And that one made me think of one that I had written down, and that is to think about your thinking. So much of how we think, and ask yourself, how's my current thinking working for me? Is it getting me closer to what I'm trying to achieve, or farther away? Because every single thing starts with our thoughts. And I know for me, I like to go so fast that I don't like to slow down and think about my thinking.
What do we say? Stinking thinking or something?
Yeah.
Do you have stinking thinking? Okay, let's see. Next one for me is activate the opportunities around you. And I once read this thing, and I shared it with some of my market center leadership teams. And it says, "Dear optimists, pessimists, and realists, while you're busy arguing about the glass of water, is it half full or half empty? I drank it. Sincerely, the activist." And I think that's so funny, but I think it's such a good lesson, because the optimist says the glass is half full. The pessimist says it's half empty. But the realist says when it's drank, I'm going to have to clean it all up. But the activist just grabs a hold of it and says, I'm just going to drink the water. And so I think sometimes that's such a good lesson for us, is you just have to get into action and go do something, instead of, figuring out if it's going to be good or bad, or are you optimistic about it or pessimistic about it. Just go do it.
Oh, and I can think of several ones that I have that apply to that. One is to just go at 80%. Don't wait till things are 100%, because the real learning happens in the movement and in the activity. So,
motion,
instead of waiting for it to be perfect, which it will never be, just go and learn what you learn in action.
Yep, I love that. Okay, let's see. What am I going to do next? Okay, the next one, lesson I've learned is called the success momentum. And actually, it's kind of what you just talked about. It's the ability to get something going until it starts to feed itself. So I think Tyler Perry may have talked about this one time. He said, it starts with hunger and filled with a belief, and then you layer little opportunities, and then you seize them, because they're preparing you for the big ones. So even if you feel like what you're doing is little things, don't wait for extraordinary opportunities. Albert Einstein said, weak men wait for opportunities, strong men make them. And I think that's such a great lesson. That's something I've heard over and over the last couple of years.
I love it. And one of mine that kind of relates to that is always be looking for that next natural door that's trying to open based on your experiences, your successes, your failures. All of those things lead you to a next opportunity, and that next opportunity is the next natural door for you to walk through, and have the courage to walk through it.
Yeah, love that. Man, my next one comes from Gary Keller, and it's a simple one. Things are either happening to you or they're happening for you, and you can choose which way you want to see it. And I think that's such a great lesson. If they're either happening to you or for you, a lot of us feel like things are just happening to us all the time. And I think really they're happening for you. It's just how you choose to look at it.
Yeah, because I always like to say that usually the most terrible thing that's happened to you that you think's happened to you, really, if you give it long enough and you learn the lessons from it, even if it is a really bad thing, will become the greatest blessing you've ever had. Only if you get the lessons and you do something with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I would say next for me is this is kind of, we kind of keep going off each other. Don't forget to remember that you prayed for this, that you prayed for what you have now. And so I was thinking, I heard this really great message from Robert Madu, a pastor, in January, and or at the beginning of COVID. And he said, remember, in January, some of you prayed the prayer, whatever it takes to get me closer to God this year, whatever it takes for me to slow down, whatever it takes for me to feel, a certain way. And he said, and then when COVID hit, we're all like, oh my gosh, what happened? So he said, just don't forget the lesson to remember the things that you prayed for. Because he said a lot of times we want to be changed, but we don't want to be challenged. And I think that is a huge lesson, because I know in the past I've been like that too. You don't want to get outside your comfort zone. So that's probably a big one for me.
All right, so mine's not necessarily going to match that one, but I'm going to say one that's been super impactful for me is to realize that money and age both amplify you. So if you're more giving, you're going to become more giving. If you're greedy, you're just going to become more greedy.
Yep. Yeah, that's a really good one. We've heard Gary talk about that too. Okay, here's another one for me. When you are in a position where you work with a lot of people, you're just going to have a lot of problems. It's so true. But I love, and I don't remember who said this, but I learned this somewhere at some point in time. We're called to people, so we're called to problems. And you have the answer though, and it's compassion. And I swear, I think this was maybe Craig, I can't remember, but if you have compassion, you must take action. And just know that if you work with a lot of people, then you're called to work with a lot of problems, but you just have to have compassion for everybody.
Yeah, love that one. This reminds me of one, a couple of them that I actually have on here. One is succeed through people, not around them. And when you succeed through them, that means you have to deal with everything you have to deal with. But on the way to success, don't just succeed around them, actually take them with you.
Yeah, I love that. Yep. Let's see. Okay, another one for me personally is life can hit you with things that you can't handle, and those are jobs for Jesus. And that's a John Maxwell saying, I think. And I just think that's a great lesson, because we can't handle it all by ourselves. And I just think that's a good one.
Yeah, one of the ones that I've heard John say in the past too is make sure your goals are so big that when they happen, only God did them.
Yeah, I love that. Oh man, I didn't have that written down, but that's such a good one. That's a great one. Yeah. Okay, let's see. Next for me, I would say over the last probably 24 months, a big lesson I've learned is affirmations are really important. And I used to kind of think like, oh, they're so like hokey pokey. I don't know. I just never was into affirmations really. And I don't know, they made a huge difference for me over the last couple of years. And so my best affirmation I've had is everything is working in the perfect timing for the perfect outcome for where I'm supposed to be. And I feel like when I get off track with things and I continue to say that, it gets me in a better space.
Okay, that's good. That's really good. I love that one. One of the things I would say is doing the things you love will give you energy. Doing the things that annoy you and you're not good at will drain your energy.
Totally.
So pay very close attention to what your energy is trying to tell you about how to design your life.
Yep, totally. That's so true. My next one is from Michael Hyatt. If you don't design your life, you'll only drift into the future, and nobody drifts to where they wanted to go. Do you remember when we heard that? I loved that.
And what's so funny is my next one was very similar. It was, if you don't design your life, somebody or something else will do it for you.
Yep, totally true. Yeah, totally true. Okay, let's see. My next one would be, this is a simple one, and we kind of talked about it this week, but is always be prepared with questions. when you get the opportunity to be in front of somebody or do something. And I know we've said it over and over, but I swear I think Diana is the best example of that. And I don't know if you noticed, did you see she had pages of questions for every person that we were going to hear this week?
Yes.
Yeah. And that's just a great lesson. Always be prepared, because I'll never forget one time when John said, I'm always so surprised when people come to meet me and they don't have any questions for me.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, crap.
I remember thinking the same thing before. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and that reminds me of one too that's super important, that's hard for me, is preparation makes you extraordinary. And I think John just said this.
That's one of mine.
Preparation makes you extraordinary, and reflection.
They're the bookends of success.
Yes.
Preparation on the front, reflect. Yeah, actually, let me find it. That was one of mine. Yeah, the bookends of success. Preparation on the front end and reflection on the back end. Oh, preparation so that you're memorable, and reflection so that your experiences are memorable.
Yes.
And that's a huge lesson. I mean.
Yeah, and those are hard. Both of those are hard for me.
Yep.
Same. I just go so fast to the next event that I miss them.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, my next lesson is kind of like a little bit of a story, and so I want to tell it to you. But the lesson is, are you committed or are you just interested? And I heard that from John Asseroff, I think is how you say his last name. And he tells a story about when he was a kid, he was doing drugs and selling drugs, and he was just in a really bad place. And his brother wanted him to come down and visit him and introduce him to this man who was his mentor. And so he came down, and the man asked him what his goals were. And John said, I just want to buy a car and get out of my parents' house. And so he said, I heard that you were getting in trouble a lot. And so he asked him, like, why are you getting in trouble? And, he just said, I don't know. I'm just a kid. And so he asked him all these questions. What kind of lifestyle do you want to be? Or do you want, when you retire, what do you want to do? What do you want your net worth to be? And all those other things. And he really, he left and he answered all those questions. And then when he handed them back to him, he said, all of this is possible, and I'm going to ask you one question to determine whether this is possible or not. Are you interested in having this kind of lifestyle, or are you committed to it? Because when you're interested, you'll do what's easy and convenient, and you'll allow the stories of all the things of your past or whatever to get in the way. But when you're committed, then you're going to do whatever it takes to do that. And so he goes on to being such a really great leader. I think he's an author and all kinds of stuff. But the purpose is, when you're committed instead of interested, you begin to attract what you want. And that's a question I found myself asking over the last year. Okay, wait a minute. Am I committed to this, or am I just interested in this? And when you really slow down and think about it, that's a good question. It has been for me.
Yeah. Well, something I think of to go along with that is always asking yourself, is what I'm doing right now moving me closer to what I say I want, or farther away? Because I think we can get so busy just being active that we're not real clear on if the activity or the things that we're doing is actually moving us closer to what we say we want.
Yep, totally agree with that. Yeah. Let's see. Next one for me, man, this has been probably something that I've learned from you and Jimmy, but just the biggest difference between wealth building and cash flow, and how you truly build wealth for the future based off of your freedom number. And did you hear Casey Crawford this week say that he knew that they could live off of $250,000 a year?
Yeah.
And they've never not lived off of $250,000 a year. And I don't even know how much he's making, but it's a whole lot more than $250,000 a year. Yeah. And I thought, man, there's a big lesson in that. But I used to think just because I hoarded all this cash that was the right thing. But yeah, that's been a big lesson for me, the difference between the two.
Yeah, that really spoke to me this time too. Another thing I've put down is procrastination. One thing that's been a huge change of the way I think is that, and Dan Sullivan teaches this, that procrastination is actually not a bad thing, because how many times have we procrastinated and felt guilty around it?
All the time.
But it's actually a good thing, because it's telling you that the goals that you have are bigger than the credentials that you have. And so that means you're going to have to figure out how to get it done. And usually that's with a who.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Yeah. Because most people think procrastination is such a terrible thing.
Oh yeah. You feel guilt. I can't tell you the times I felt guilty about procrastinating.
Yep. Okay, let's see. My next one is, most people would rather master comfort zones than change. And I just think that that's just such a skill that we need to learn, especially right now, because we have a lot of change more than ever. And we gravitate towards what we're most comfortable with or familiar with. But I think we just have to be open to change. And if you're not, then that's a lesson. You got to get used to it.
And one that I think is big that a lot of people really struggle with is, and nobody likes to fail, but failure is how you get to success. And a lot of people that are perfectionists, or that don't want to be wrong, or don't want to that struggle with failing, I think this is one of their big roadblocks to get to the success that they really want. Is they're so trying to avoid failure instead of realizing failure is the path to success. You can read all the books you want to in the world about all the most successful people, and you're going to see tons of failures before you see the big success that they have.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people probably don't go for what they really want to go for because they're afraid they're going to fail. Yeah. Let's see. Next one is an easy one. You make time for what's important and you make an excuse for what isn't.
So true. Yeah, I've always say we always have time for what we decide is important to us. That's really good.
Yeah.
You know, one of my favorites from Joe Polish is life gives to the giver and takes from the taker. Love it. I keep repeating it. I just love it.
That's the best lesson. I knew you'd have that one on your list. I love it. This is something probably, I think you taught me this, but I'm wondering who you learned it from. When the pain of something gets to be too much is when you'll actually make a decision to make a change.
Yes.
That's so true. Did you have that one on your list?
No, I did not have it on my list, but
good.
I say it a million times that when you have something so big that you're moving towards and the pain of staying where you are is greater, that's when you'll make that move towards that. Otherwise people just stay like kind of on a hamster wheel because of that. This was one that ties into yours about money, but invest in what you know, understand, and what can somewhat control. Because when you just give your money to other people or you don't really understand the investment, you're really not an investor. You're more speculating, and that's where people lose all their money.
Yeah, it's so true. I love that. Okay, next one for me is just never be afraid to ask. You know, that was one of the things I got from John this week too. Never be afraid to ask. People are, and actually it was funny because, you know, one day I sat and had lunch with a couple, and they said, nobody ever comes to us and asks us hardly. Like, we would help and do and speak and do all these things, but we just don't get asked a lot. And she said, I don't know why we don't get asked a lot. And I said, well, I've wanted to ask you numerous times. I think people think that they're too busy or they don't want to or all those things. And so just never be afraid to ask. I mean, what's the worst that can happen? You get told no?
Yeah, it's funny you should say that, because my number 34 was always ask. And I think you and I decided we're going to do a podcast on the great blessings that by being willing to ask we've gotten in our life. But I say you already have no, so why not?
Yeah. Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, I love that. Okay, next one for me is choose wisely who you determine wealth for. That was another thing that you taught me.
Yes.
And just to look around and see if the person you determine wealth for, if they haven't made anybody else's life bigger than or only their, what do you always say? Hold on, let me back up. Look around and see if they've made other people's lives bigger, and if only their life has gotten bigger, then that might not be somebody you want to determine wealth for.
Yeah, I had that one also, and the only thing I'll add to that is also look at their life. Would you want their life?
Oh, that's a good one too.
And then something we learned this week that was pretty cool is when you're selecting people in your leadership roles, ask, would you want your child to work for them? That was huge for me.
Yeah, love that. Yeah, I love that one. Okay. Is it my turn? Was that your? Yeah, that was you. Okay. Okay. For me, I think another one is just a lesson around giving. And I love the quote, we were created to pour, not to store. And John Maxwell said probably 2 or 3 years ago somewhere, he said, you're not moved over emotional consuming stories. You're moved over emotional giving stories.
Yes.
And I always remember that. Yeah. And he always says, it's better to give than to receive. So I just think there's a good lesson around that.
Love that one. One that I have is when you bring value to the world, you cannot keep the money away.
Oh, I have one similar.
So if you just focus on what value you're bringing, the money will just show up in proportion to the value that you bring to the world.
Yep. Okay. That was my number 45. When you're doing what you love, the money will come. Don't chase the money. It's about so much more than that, because it'll come to you.
Yep.
Yep.
I put one, this one just popped in my head, said a plan is just needed to get you started. I mean, a plan or a number is just needed to get you started. And then the passion of what you're doing will carry the rest of the way.
Love that. Yep. Let's see. My next one is your attitude is the difference maker. It's the one thing that you can control. It's the one thing that can make a difference. Someone once said, your attitude is the paintbrush of your mind. It can be your best friend or your enemy. And I just think controlling your attitude is such a great lesson, because John talks about that so much too. It takes work. I mean, you have to work on your attitude every single day. Yeah. But it's the one thing you can control no matter what's going on around you.
Yeah, I love that one. One of mine is money is only good for the good it can do.
Love that
too. So the the truth about money is, if you grew up thinking that money is evil, then you may have to work on that concept. A lot of people grew up that way, or maybe grew up thinking that you shouldn't want so much or whatever. And the truth is, money is only good for the good it can do.
Yep, love that. Yeah, I love that. My next one was the lesson of the power of being a great gift giver. And you and I have always talked about that because both of us love to give gifts. And John said this week it's actually selfish because you feel so good when you give somebody else a gift. But the one thing that I said about that is I learned, and this was one of the ones I learned from him this week, so I won't go too much into it. We'll save it for the podcast, was just that the best gifts have a part of yourself in them. So when you give to somebody else, but we'll tell that story about Margaret on the next podcast.
Yep. I love that. One that I've learned from a class that I teach many, many times throughout the year, as much as I can, is from Fierce Conversation. And it is, the conversation is the relationship.
Yep.
So if it's muted or not authentic or not true, then that really defines what your relationship is also.
Yep. I love that one so much. Okay, next for me, 31. You only have 24 hours in a day. And this was a big lesson for me. I learned this, I don't know when, but you only have 24 hours in a day. So if you miss 3 hours today of the intentional thing that you need to do, you don't get to add 3 hours on to tomorrow to make it 27. You only have 24 hours. And at the same time, me and you and Warren Buffett and John Maxwell and LeBron James, we all only have 24 hours in our day. So it's just how you choose to spend them is really what matters.
Love it. My next one also comes from when I teach Fierce Conversation, and that's just to ask yourself, where in my life is gradually and then suddenly about to happen? It could be suddenly good, or it could be suddenly bad.
Yeah, I can think of a ton of examples of that from before. Okay, next one for me is just live with intentionality. That was my word of the year. I think that was your word of the, was that your intentional? Was your word of the year too? Yeah. But especially about relationships, because one thing I heard this week too that I really loved was relationships. What did he say? Relationships deteriorate when we take them for granted. And so really
can't be one-sided.
Yeah, they can't be one-sided. Yeah. So really being intentional about your relationships too.
Okay. Love it. And speaking of relationships, you should treat and this one I think came from Gary, maybe in Quantum Leap or something, it says you should treat your family like they're glass balls and your work as if they're rubber balls.
Love that. That comes from
rubber balls will bounce back. Glass balls can get shattered.
Yep. Yeah, I love that one so much. My next one was just a lesson about be authentic. And it's a Craig Groeschel quote that I've always loved. People would rather follow a leader that's real than a leader that's right. And just to be your best authentic self and make that your greatest asset.
Love it. If you really want to master something, offer to teach it to someone.
Oh, that's a good one. That's so true. That's scary at first, though, to teach something. Let's see. I used to have massive anxiety when I was younger. So this one is a big lesson for me. When anxiety attacks, don't drop your guard. And I actually learned this probably a year or so ago. And I ordered these really cool vintage leather boxing gloves, and they hang in my office because it's a visual reminder of like keeping your guard up, like not to drop your guard when anxiety hits. Because actually, I think it was Andy Stanley said the devil targets your mind and his weapons are lies. So you have to, whenever you feel like panic is happening inside of you, you just have to keep your guard up. And that was a big lesson for me.
Love it. People don't do what you tell them. They only do what they self-discover. So if you really want someone to get something, look for ways that you can help them self-discover. And the best ways for them to do that is stories, questions, or experientially. So it's easier to get someone into an experiential situation so that they can learn something than me constantly trying to tell them something.
Yeah.
Or look for people in your that you could bring into your life to get them to self-discover.
Yeah. I knew that you would have that one, so I didn't write it down because you taught me that. But that's probably one of the greatest lessons I've ever learned is that. My next one was own your slice of the conflict pie. And what that means is you're gonna always have issues that you don't get along with other people or relationships or whatever, but just humbling yourself and owning your slice of the conflict pie, I think, is a big lesson.
I love that one. And one that I have similar to that one is always look for your DNA in a situation.
Yep. Yeah, that's a great one. Let's see. Next one for me is leadership is a stewardship. And I used to struggle with this. Now I think hopefully I'm getting a little bit better at it, but If you're blessed to lead people, then it was given to you and it can be taken away. And the lesson around this is we don't have people, we have a responsibility to people as a leader. And, sometimes you hear a lot of people say, my this, my that, my people, and really I feel like the way it should be is it's you, that's a stewardship. So you're not your own as a leader, I guess would be the lesson.
That's a great one.
Yeah.
I put down asking great questions is way better than making great statements. So always ask, what is a great question that I can come back with, rather than make a statement or just show people what I know. What would be a great question that would take that relationship even deeper?
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's a good one. Let's see. My next one was seek wise counsel in difficult times. And that's pretty self-explanatory. I feel like you just always need people in your life that are your adultier adults that you can seek wise counsel.
Love that one. Most people want to be understood, not interpreted. So seek to understand.
Love that one. Yep. My next one after the wise counsel was mentors, and just how important a mentor can be in your life. But the lesson was the best thing you can do for a mentor is to repay them by going out and actually doing what they tell you to do, or the advice that they give you. And, at lunch one day I was talking with Tony DeCello, and he said the reason why he still talks to Lance Loken every single week for free, or whatever, is because Lance has always done what he's told him to do. Anything Tony says, like, Lance will the very next day come back that he's already put the plan together to do it. And he said, so I love to mentor people like that because they go and do what we talk about.
Yeah, I love that too. Yeah, because you start to wonder about your advice if no one ever does it and does anything with it.
Yeah.
One that I wrote down is, it doesn't matter how many tools a person has in their toolbox if they don't use any of them.
Mm-hmm. That's a good one. Really good one. Let's see, what am I? I'm 41. As a leader, you can be uncertain, but you can't be unclear. And I feel like so many times as a leader in the last several years, clarity has not been a strength of mine. And Andy Stanley says clarity is the next best thing to certainty. So for example, as a leader, you would say, I don't know what the future holds, but here's what to do in the meantime. Or I don't know what will happen, but here's the plan for now, and then we'll adjust it as circumstances change. But just being clear in your communication with the people that you lead.
Oh, I love that one. That's awesome. One that I wrote down is always make big commitments that make you want to wet your pants.
Yeah, I figured you'd have that one too.
Love Dan Sullivan's 4 C's.
Yeah, love that. I wrote down friendship is the family that you choose. And I think I was talking about this actually today at the pool with some other people. And when John asked those 4 questions about friendship, let's see, we'll save those till the John Maxwell episode. But when he asked those, I was thinking, man, I probably have about 3 or 4 people that I could answer yes to on all those. But just, think about friendship as the family that you choose. And so really honoring your friendships. Because life gets busy, everybody gets into their own seasons of life. And then I remember I used to always ask my mom, why do you only have one friend? And, it'd be not trying to be mean, but just being honest. And I remember she would be like, when you get older, your priorities change.
I love it. A big one is stop asking how and ask who.
Love that one. Yeah. That's a Dan Sullivan, isn't it?
Yeah, that is definitely Dan Sullivan. Matter of fact, he's got a brand new book out called Who Not How. Everybody run out and buy it. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
I've already started it.
I did the pre-order. I'm hoping it's at home when I get back.
I think you can get it on Kindle.
I know. Already. That's right. Yeah. Okay, let's see. My next one was don't despise small beginnings because acorns turn into trees. And that's a Tyler Perry thing. And it kind of goes with my favorite saying, bloom where you're planted.
One that I have is you need people more than they need you. And I got this one from Gary. I remember him saying it years ago. And I didn't really understand it at the time, but I get it now. You need people more than they need you. Yeah.
Let's see. My next one was when opportunity comes, it's too late to prepare. So you just have to prepare yourself first, because when I look back, every opportunity, it's not like I was like, man, this is the perfect time for this to happen. So just prepare yourself first and be ready for opportunity.
Love it. One I have similar to that is sometimes to get a big opportunity, you got to get on a plane, and maybe you don't necessarily really have to get on a plane.
I love when you say that.
But you do have to get out of your comfort zone. And you cannot sit around and say, well, I want the opportunity when it gets within about 3 feet of my little box I have here.
Yep.
That's not the way opportunity happens.
Nope.
And so be willing to get on a plane if that's what it takes to get a big opportunity. And then the other thing I'll just add to that is big opportunities go first, mediums go second, small's always there. So if you're spending all your time on your small opportunities, you're missing sometimes some medium or bigger opportunities because you're just focusing on the small ones.
Man, that's really good. Let's see. My next one that I learned, a good lesson, is the definition of ego, which is edging God out. I love that one.
That's awesome. Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4. Let's see. You should have, I think I've got 5 left.
So I'm going to switch and talk a little bit about what I've learned, because I spend so much time on exercise and health. I would say stop expecting exercise to fix your weight problem. Expect exercise to fix your mental and your heart problem.
Oh, that's good.
Yep.
Yeah, because what do they say? Like most of it's what you eat, right? Or something.
80% is what you eat.
Wow.
So.
Yep. Okay. Mine was you never go into another position, you grow into that position. So if you go, you won't stay, and if you grow, you will.
My next one's going to be kind of around my magic formula that I love, which is
I was hoping you'd share this.
Relationship plus validity plus value gaps over time. In other words, who do I want to be a hero to? What am I doing to increase my validity, to allow those people to want to be in a deep relationship with me? And what kind of questions am I asking to learn their value gap? And am I committed to the time it takes to get the success I want in it?
Yeah, I love that's one of my, that was such a great one. Let's see. My next one was just add value to people all the time. And, John talks about that. He talked about that a lot this week. He's talked about that for a long time. But one thing I loved this week that he said was add value to people that may never give anything back to you, because it keeps your motives pure. I thought that was so good. And I think that's such a good lesson.
Yeah, not that tit for tat. I do it for them, so they'll do something for me.
Yep.
Okay, let me see. One of mine that I put is everyone needs playtime, prep time, and pay time.
Ooh,
sometimes
that's a good
we
one.
Don't actually divide our time.
Yep.
We just work. And the prep time and the play time is just as important as our pay time.
That's a really good one. Gosh, I forgot about that one. That's a really good one. Okay, let's see. My next one was when you're really good at what you love, you make it look easy. And I feel like people probably ask you this about stuff all the time too, but people will be like, how did you do that? But I can think back when I really nailed it was because I loved doing it. And so it did look easy.
And sometimes it looks, I think, so easy to us that we think it's easy for everybody.
Yep.
And so we don't realize that it's not that easy for everybody else. And it could be our unique ability that we help other people with.
Yeah.
Okay, here's one of my favorites. You'll remember this in a minute I say it, is stay at 30,000 feet, not in the weeds at 1,000 feet.
Love it. Yep. That's been a big lesson. I actually said that to somebody last night.
Yep.
At the after.
No fun at 1,000 feet.
No.
Lots of fun at 30,000.
Yep.
You see things differently from 30,000 feet also.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. Actually, it's funny because I just had a conversation last night with someone after dinner, and he said, man, you gave me such wisdom. I said, the only reason is because I've had the 30,000 foot view of where you are, and you haven't had that part yet. And he was like, great. Man, that's so true. So I just used that. So thanks for teaching me that. Let's see. I think this is my last one. How many do you have left?
I'm about done.
Okay. I didn't do a good job of keeping up with my numbers. Let's see. Did I say that one? Yep, I said when you're doing okay, yeah. So when you're going on the right path, you won't always get it right, but you're moving in the right direction. Like couldn't think of a good way to say that, but I feel like even sometimes when you're on the right path, you're still gonna have some setbacks, or you're still gonna have things that aren't gonna like hit all the time, but just like stay the course. Because did you say 50-yard line yet? Do you have that written down?
No, I didn't write that one down. That's a good one.
That's a really good one, because you always say you don't know whether you're on the 5-yard line or the 50-yard line.
Yeah, it's don't quit, because you don't know. You don't know if you're on the 50-yard line or the 5-yard line. So just always assume you're on the 5-yard line.
That was a huge one for me. Yes. I did write it down because I figured you'd have it.
Yeah. Well, there were so many. It's hard to just do 50.
I know. Yeah.
Each, 50 each.
But one thing John says about that last one for me is good misses encourage you and bad misses discourage you. And sometimes you miss your way to the hits because you don't stay in it long enough.
That's great.
So yeah.
I put this one down because this was a big lesson for me, is when you decide to have people working for you somewhere in your life, you have an obligation to make the biggest life possible so that they can get their dreams and their goals met inside of your dreams and goals. And sometimes I think people hire people to do certain tasks and do certain things, never thinking and saying, well, I'm kind of happy where I'm at. I'm not really sure why I'd want to grow any bigger. Well, you should want to grow bigger because great people will wind up leaving if they look up and there's no more opportunity.
Yeah, definitely. Totally true. That was my last one.
Did you have another one? I don't think so. Let me see if I have one more. The only other one I put that really has that has really stuck out to me during COVID is if you don't take care of your body, where will you live? Because I see so many people struggling with COVID because they're not healthy. And so we really have to move that up as a priority in our life, all of us.
Yeah, I think that's been a huge one I was so happy this week to see, I probably talked to 5 or 6 people here this week at Exchange that said, like just looking at them, they look like they're in better shape or they've lost weight or something. And they all said because of COVID, like they got it together.
Yeah. Yep. Some people gained the weight and some people decided to take the bull by the horns and take care of their health.
Get healthier. Yeah. Yep. All right. So we fell in love with these drinks while we're here. These, what are they called? Lemon drops. Lemon drops. Yeah. Lemon drops. And so we thought it'd be fun to cheers to 100 episodes. Well, next 100.
Oh,
next 100.
Yep. Cheers to the next 100 episodes.
Yeah. Cheers. Yes.
Awesome. So, hey, remember, we're about out of time, but if you just remember that the greatest compliment you can give Dana and I is to pass this podcast along to someone, your clients, your friends in the business, your family, anybody that you feel like would benefit from listening to this podcast. We'd love for you to pass this on, and for sure, subscribe if you haven't already, and give us a review. And if you have great questions or things that you'd like for us to cover in the podcast, or guests you'd like for us to go after, we like to go after we've got some good ones coming. We got some good guests coming. So if you've got guests that you'd love for us to go after, be sure and submit it to us at info@everything life and real estate. So Dana, thank you. And I will talk to you next week.
Sounds good. I know we won't be together next week, but we'll be back on. So, okay.
All right.
Be sure to subscribe for more business strategies and tactics to inspire you to live an abundant real estate life. Don't forget to rate and review so we can bring you the best content. Find this and other valuable information at everythinglifeandrealestate.com.